Begin this morning with Representative Ben McAdams. Representative, great to have you back on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Glenn.
8 months now in office. Take a look back, and what are your thoughts on the first 8 months? I'm sure it's kind of a whirlwind type experience.
It has been a whirlwind. I would first say it's an honor to represent the people of Utah in Washington. I'm back there fighting to find solutions to expand access to health care, lower health care costs. First bill I introduced was to require a balanced budget. I'm really concerned about the level of fiscal irresponsibility and how we're in a mess. I think it's taken both parties to get us there, and we've got to stop the spending and bring that deficit in line.
Is there anything that has kind of caught you by surprise that you didn't necessarily think would be that way?
You know, I think a couple of things. First of all, it is as dysfunctional on the inside as it looks from the outside, and
so that was no surprise.
No surprise. Yeah. I think that there are a lot of good people there on both sides of the aisle. I'm starting to build relationships with Republicans, with Democrats, and trying to find a way to heal a broken Washington. I'm not ready to say that it's forever broken. We've got to fix it. This country is amazing. We got to heal. But I think it's going to take a lot of work. It's got to take building trust, building relationships, and trying to look at what's good for the American people, not just what's good for any party.
You take a look at Washington today, though, and it seems, well, you've already said that it's broken and needs to be fixed, but it just seems like people are not willing to do that. It seems to be a party-first mentality.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I took a trip about a month ago to the US-Mexico border, and it was Republicans and Democrats. We went together, and we looked at the border, and that was probably the most productive day I've spent in Congress, because we saw the problem through each other's eyes. We humanized the problem, both with border control, with the immigrants and refugees at the border, and then Republicans and Democrats understanding our perspectives. We had different people with different perspectives, but we could see why people had their perspective, and we started to engage in some bridge building and some problem solving there, and I just think we need more of that. There's just not enough of that in Washington.
Has any action taken place since then that can actually move the needle at all?
Yeah, well, that group, I came back with that group. We were part of the Problem Solvers Caucus. It's Republicans and Democrats who are focused on problem solving. We came back and we voted through a humanitarian relief bill for the border that got broad bipartisan support and signed by the president. And look, it didn't solve all the world's problems, or it didn't fix our broken immigration system, but we were able to address an issue that was immediately in front of us, which was a system that was overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of asylum seekers.
I want to ask you about a clear dynamic that's playing out in the Democratic caucus. House leadership versus some newer, more, I guess you would say, far-left Democrats. A clear dispute. What do you make of that as you see that play out?
You know, I've tried to just stay out of that. I don't think it's good for me or good for the state of Utah to be in the middle of a tug-of-war like that. I went back there saying I was going to do what's good for the people of Utah, and at times that would put me at odds with my own party, and that's okay. I think that's what the people of Utah expected me to do. So I'm working to advance things that are good for Utah, and some of it's kind of boring and technical, but getting money, for example, to invest in our water and our clean water here in Utah, or to lower the cost of college tuition, and doing that and really trying to stay out of some of the drama and politics of Washington.
What do you see as your role there, though, as that battle, or whatever you want to call it, plays out? There have been times like with the Senate border bill, where you and some of your other colleagues have come and said, look, we need to take this up. Do you see that as your role in this current makeup?
Yeah, and that's the exact bill that I was just referring to. We came back, the problem solvers, and said the Senate had passed it. The more progressive branch of the Democratic Party was refusing to take it up. And I felt it was important that we saw kids that were suffering. We saw a system that was overwhelmed, and we said we want to take up the Senate bill that passed with Democrat, Republican support. We want to take it up. We want to pass it through the House, and we did. We were successful in doing that. And some of my colleagues were frustrated that we joined with Republicans to get that done, but it was the right thing to do.
You know, part of your job is running every 2 years, and some of the opposition you see out there pointed toward you is that you are voting with the far left more often than not. What's your response to that?
Well, that's simply not true. If you look at my record, I'm one of the Democrats that's most likely to vote with Republicans to cross to the other side, in the top 5 of that. And it's not really that I even think about how the parties are voting. I'm going to do what I think is right for the people of Utah, and work to do my job. And I'm proud of my record. And I'll continue to do that. I'm going to put Utah first over anything else.
Vice President Pence recently coming to Utah, calling you out by name and saying bring the USMCA, or play a role in bringing it up for a vote. You immediately responded and said, hey, I've done that. Talk about that, because you have already come out and said you support it.
Yeah,
Why is that?
That's another example where I'm working on with both sides of the aisle to try and move forward things that are important to the state of Utah and to America. And so when I had the privilege of meeting one-on-one with the Vice President and talking about the U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, Canada trade agreement, and I share his point of view that this is something that needs to get done. And I've reached out to my colleagues, Democratic colleagues in Washington, and said that we need to negotiate in good faith with an effort to get to yes on this deal. And it's important, I know it's important to Utah's economy, and we've got to get that done. And you know, I think it's an example of where Utah is well served by having people on both sides of the aisle in positions to advocate for what's good for the state. So I was in a position, even though I'm a new member of Congress, I'm in a position to take that message directly to House leadership and call for moving forward in good faith and getting to yes on that trade agreement.
You recently spent some time down at UVU talking about the cost of college. One of the popular messages we're hearing from the top candidates on the Democratic side for 2020 is this idea of free college. Do you support that?
Well, so I worked really hard. I worked multiple part-time jobs to put myself through college. I actually still have college student loans that I'm paying for now, and I don't regret that. It was a sacrifice that I had to make to get to where I am today. And I don't support free college tuition. I understand that college costs have gone up even since I was in college 20 years ago, and people are frustrated that it seems like maybe 3 part-time jobs and student loans isn't enough even today to get through. So we've got to do something to address the rising cost of college tuition, but free college isn't the answer.
What are some of the answers? What can you do to reduce that? Because it is no doubt a burden.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that's changed since I was in college that I'd like to go back to is when I was in college, my student loan interest payments didn't start accruing on my student loans until I graduated. And now interest starts immediately, but that was such a relief for me to not see that college student loan compounding as I was working toward my degree with limited ability, you know, working hard to just put gas in my car. I couldn't make payments on a student loan at that point. And so I think there's some things around the edges we need to look at. I was a recipient of Pell Grants. And we do need to look at need-based grants to lower the cost of tuition for people who maybe are in a different financial situation. But I don't think a handout to everybody, regardless of their income or socioeconomic status, for free college is the way to go. But I think we can look at some need-based grants and approaches and scholarships and that to make it so that everybody who wants to can access college education. They're going to have to make personal sacrifices. They're going to have to pay for it, but we want it achievable for anybody who wants it.
Okay, real quick, we have about 30 seconds left. Gun control, once again, a very big conversation. It sounds like Republicans are saying, yeah, maybe it is time to get something done. What are some reasonable steps you think we could take in that direction?
Well, so I'm a gun owner and I support the Second Amendment, but I think with rights come responsibilities. One of the things that I do support is expanding background checks, making sure that anybody who buys a gun goes through a background check. We want to keep guns out of the hands of terrorists, of domestic abusers, people who have shown a propensity for violence, and we want to keep people safe. And I think that's a reasonable step that we can take is making sure that you are given a background check before you buy a gun.
All right, you guys will be going back in about a week or so now, and it'll be interesting to see if there's movement on that end. Thanks for coming in. Great to check in with you.
Thank you. Great to chat.